Thank you, and it's a real honour to be invited to GrAiNZ, and bread and butter goes together so well, so I feel really welcomed, and it's a pleasure to be here. But I really take honour in being able to share my story and give you an insight today to Lard and what makes us tick. Was it just the arrow? The arrow? Yeah, so I'm breaking up my talk today into three 15-minute sections. So the first is the story about Lard and how we came about. The second is about butter and what it's all about. And I'm going to finish with some insight into the dairy industry. Since deregulation in 2000, the year 2000, so much has changed, and it's sort of going in many directions, but certainly one is where it's shrinking. So yeah, Andy touched on my life, I guess, in a nutshell. And I did grow up on a dairy farm, and I have brothers who are still dairy farming today down in the Western District. My parents migrated from Italy. They set up a farm. My dad wanted to be self-sufficient and, you know, run a herd of cows, and he did all of that with my mother. There's three brothers, two other sisters, so we're quite large. It was, you know, normal for us to have a veggie garden, make our own ricotta and butter, you know, all of those sort of things that we're enjoying today if we have that opportunity. I went to university, I did marketing and tourism, you know, hamster wheel sort of stuff, had a family, that sort of thing. But in that time, I sort of got a bit bored with the whole process of, you know, running a career and stuff, and looking for something a little bit different. With that, you know, I was looking for a challenge, something that would really interest me and bring out some passions. And I think this is where my family comes into it, and what growing up on the farm. So I had a trip to Europe and went to France and went to Normandy and St. Malo and places like that, and fell in love with their butter and questioned, why don't we have really good butter like this? The sort of butter that you can open the packet and just devour, you know. Those sort of butters you don't get from the supermarket. And I thought, we've got such a great dairy industry, and our cows are grass-fed, the rivers are clean, the water's clean, that sort of thing. Why didn't we have such beautiful butter? Creamy, tasty, buttery. It was just amazing. So when I returned, I came back and started to research butter and the consumption of butter around the world and that sort of thing. And I remember the line going, you know, just starting and just flatlining for a long time. And I think that was a reflection of the standards of butter that are out there in this world. I went further into that research, and I did a cheese. I wanted to learn how to make butter, basically. And my experience in making butter was, you know, over whipping cream, and sometimes I'd throw that out not knowing I'd made butter, sort of thing. I think we've all done that before. But when I did the cheese course, I only wanted to learn about the cultures and what cultures did and stuff. But there was nowhere in this country where you could actually learn the science of butter making, which was really unfortunate, I guess. And I remember attending a dairy function and wanting to learn about the networks of dairy and that sort of thing. And I remember meeting this man who meant to be the dairy guru, and I said, you know, why isn't there cultured butter in this country? There weren't many, but why haven't we got cultured butter? And he said to me, oh, if Murray Goulburn isn't making it, then it's not worth making. And I remember thinking, well, think about now, where is Murray Goulburn today? It's just not around anymore, is it? So that was, I mean, it was little to go on with them, but I still persisted. And in that time of researching butter and learning how to make butter and that sort of thing, I was made redundant from my job, which was, you know, a good thing at the time because I was pretty bloody bored with it. And with that redundancy payout, I bought my first churn. So it was really a good thing to happen to me at the time, because buying the churn was $10,000. So it was a lot of bloody money for me to do this, and not knowing where it was going to lead. And I still soldiered on, and I turned my garage into a licensed butter factory, licensed by Dairy Food Safety Victoria, and I started culturing butter. And geez, I had some really shitty batches and really cheesy batches and things like that, and made a big mess and everything, but just persisted and persisted. And you know, in that time, with this really small churn that was like the cabinet of a filing cabinet, like it was only so big, and you could only churn 10 litres of cream at a time and things like that. But you know, it started to really get to understand the science of butter, and it wasn't just about taste alone, but it was about things like pH and you know, time and temperature and all those sort of things. So with my, you know, sleuthing and investigation, I continued. I found in Wisconsin, I went to Wisconsin eventually to do a butter maker's apprenticeship. So if it all falls flat in Victoria or Australia, I can go to Wisconsin and learn how to make butter or make butter. But that was amazing, because they have a department dedicated to dairy, to making butter, to making ice cream, to making cheese, to making anything related to dairy, and they had all the facilities and everything. And we made goat cheese, goat milk butter, made sheep's milk butter, we made cow's butter, we make a melange, which was a combination of all three. We did sweet cream butter, which is your standard butter you get today, and we did cultured butter, and that was just amazing. And I did that for one whole week, took myself to Wisconsin to learn how to do that. Now, on a side note, that opportunity is just not available here in Australia, which is really unfortunate, considering butter's so popular. Butter is what we grew up on. We've got a great dairy industry. But to learn the science and the real fundamentals of butter, it's just not here, which is just a sad thing, I guess. It used to be here in the 1950s and 40s, but it's just not here today. If you do want to learn how to make butter, a lot of courses, or a lot of cheese courses, teach you how to make cultured butter, but using yogurt. But if you're a purist like me, you really want to know how to do it right from the start. So that's why I went to Wisconsin, was to learn really truly how to make good butter. So, and now today we make a cultured butter. We do a salted and unsalted. We make about close to 1.5 tonnes a week of butter, more unsalted butter than salted, and we also have broken into making flavoured butters, so garlic butter, black garlic butter, roasted tomato butter, all those sort of things. But the beauty about the industry, and if you do it well, is that there's no waste in what we make. So we get the cream pasteurised, and it comes to us in, 1 tonne bins. With that cream, we ferment it, which is turned into creme fraiche. With that creme fraiche, we churn it, and once you've churned that creme fraiche, you've got butter and you've got buttermilk, and we harvest the buttermilk and we sell that. So nothing is thrown away, and all our butter is made to order. So it's not like we stockpile it and freeze it, which is what a lot of butter is done today. And then when it's frozen, you can date it, and then once it's thawed, you date it and then give it the shelf life it needs. So there's tips and tricks in the industry, but there's no waste, which is really fortunate for us. I think if you're making cheese, you've got the whey. There's not much you can do with the whey. I forgot about my slides, sorry. I can talk. Dairy farmer's daughter, French influence, that sort of thing. That's a sort of insight into our very small factory. We've got 10 staff on the books, but any 4 at one time. someone churning, someone forming, and then everyone else picking and packing and that sort of thing. We have a barrel churn, which comes from Italy. And starting a butter factory, certainly at the level we started at, everything is imported. But to get that specialised equipment helps you create a quality end product. So yeah, it turns out, and we're in the process. So we're in our third factory. Over 6 years we've been going. The first one being in the garage, the second one sort of next size up, and the third one we're currently in. And now we're in the process of extending that factory, doubling its footprint, and I purchased a 2,000 litre churn. So things are going a bit crazy, but good crazy, and that's organic growth really in that sense. So it's a really good reflection on the community and the customer base, is that they're really starting to get into and understanding where their food's coming from, what they appreciate, and what's really important to me is that they notice the difference between our butter and what they buy at the supermarket. If my butter tasted the same as the supermarket, then what's the point, really? So that's really important in that sense. Which brings me to butter and what I've learned. And it really pains me to understand, or to hear people say to me, "Oh, why is your butter so expensive?" And you probably get it too with your bread, maybe, and the comparisons and things like that. Why is it so expensive? And it's and I say, well, you can come on down to my factory and you can help me, because it'd be great to have those extra hands, that's for sure. We're very hands-on. I had a friend who came to me. He worked for Fonterra. He worked at the Western Star factory in Cobden. He came to me and he said, "I want to learn how to make butter." And I said, "What do you mean? You come from the butter factory, Western Star." He said, "Oh, I don't know how that's made. I just push buttons." So, I mean, they don't get to see it, they don't get to smell it, they don't get to taste it, that sort of thing. I mean, we get to do that every day. But I get it. I'm not poo-pooing Western Star by any means. I was brought up on Western Star. But there is a place for Western Star, and it's a place of convenience at the end of the day. And it's a good quality butter. So yeah, butter is a common spread. It's basically, we were brought up on butter. 12.5 million people buy butter in Australia every day. And when it comes to choosing between butter and margarine, thankfully they choose butter. It has a common flavour though. What you get at the supermarket is pretty much made by the same processor, 3 different brands, same processor, something like that. It's about high velocity churning. It's about milk coming, or cream coming from all different sections of the country and even overseas, and bringing it together and making it in 5 minutes, and then, out it goes and on the shelves and that sort of thing. We've got certainly a lot of international brands to choose from, but very few cultured brands, and you could count them on one hand really in this country. But it's funny with butter. Back in the 16th century, butter was of a very poor quality, but it became expensive, and so that's why they invented margarine. And then there was a big fight between margarine and butter, so much so that government started to demand margarine be coloured pink so that people could tell the difference. But this story of butter and margarine, welcome, is that margarine basically gave a kick in the bum to butter makers because the quality was so poor that it made butter makers stand up and say, well, we now have competition. They did something about it, and that's why we have good quality butter today, as a result of, that competition with margarine. So it sort of was a good thing to have on board at the end of the day. But in terms of understanding butter, the general person on the street doesn't really understand how to look after butter, how to take care of your butter, how to use it properly, how to store it properly, those sort of things, and why it doesn't last long enough, those sort of things. And they want it to have a long life, and they want it to withstand stinky fridges, and they want it to, forever taste amazing. But, that's just not the understanding of what butter should be. There are two types of butter, basically, two sort of big schools of butter, and one of them is the sweet cream butter, which is your standard churn up standard cream, and then separate the buttermilk and then add the salt if you need to. That's never going to have a flavour because cream itself is alkaline and it doesn't have a flavour at all. So if you ever buy a butter that's just a sweet cream butter and it tastes really buttery, I'd be questioning what you're eating, basically. And then there's the cultured butter. Cultured butter was something very popular in Europe, certainly before electricity was invented. Cultured butter came about because they let the cream sit in like near the fireplace and let it do its thing, let the good bacteria eat through the lactose in the cream, sour out, and then they'd churn that, and that was cultured butter. Butter comes in all different shapes and sizes, or all different varieties, I guess. I'm currently doing the fundamentals of butter making at the University of Wisconsin, so it's sort of like so much, but then there's still a lot of stuff I don't know about butter, and so it's good to sort of go back and revisit that and have those burning questions. I don't really have anyone I can talk to in this country about, the problems of butter and stuff, so it's sort of good to turn to these guys. But this is one of the slides that comes from the notes, and as you can see, there's an Amish butter, so that's a type of butter in Wisconsin. But there's all these different, so much you can do with butter. And what's beautiful about butter is its versatility. So there's hand-rolled, grass-fed, as opposed to grain-fed, raw cream, which is your raw, unpasteurized cream, whey cream, so it's butter made from the whey of cheese. So it comes out, and it happens more in northern Italy, in Parmesan country, where they make butter using the whey from Parmesan whey, and that way it has a more of a cheesy taste. Clarified butter and ghee, salted and unsalted, those sort of things. So that's just a start, and there's much more there. But the thing about butter today is that it's probably one of the most adulterated products on the shelf. And it does come under fire for fraud as well, where it's people take it for what it is, but don't, as long as it's yellow, certainly in this country and others, but it can also be white, that they use things, or they throw a lot of stuff to make a little bit go a long way. So they put in things like beef tallow and lard, vegetable materials, and synthetic laboratory-produced substances. So, that's been found in many brands across Europe, and it's quite concerning, and also the US, it's quite concerning that is happening. And it's not just with butter. You can say it's happening with beef and chicken and breads and things like that as well. But so butter today, has a big list of grey, ingredients that you just don't know what you're eating. The other aspect about butter is the flavouring, and they consider it a natural flavouring, and according to, I guess, the authorities on food, you can put in so much flavouring without having to declare. So because it's a natural flavour, but that's when I was talking about sweet cream butter, that if it does taste buttery, then know that they've put in a natural flavouring to make it taste buttery. And the same with colour. There's white butter, so they give it a bit of yellowness, and it's hard to know. They just need a little bit to go a long way, and they don't have to declare that. So you sort of wonder when you pick up or purchase any butter, where has it come from? How fresh is the butter? How fresh is the cream? Is it cream that's really in there? You know, butter's really undergoing an ultra-processing aspect, and that's quite concerning. It's good to know. And like I said, it's hard to... You'll never get a chance to go to the Fonterra or Saputo or any of those processors to see their facilities. It's never going to happen. But it's good to know where your product or where the ingredients are coming from to when you're purchasing that product. So the more, or I guess the supermarkets we have today tend to dictate what they want to stock or influence the customer's needs, and tends to make the demands for a longer shelf life. And so people say, why does your butter only last 3 months? It's a perishable. Why make something that's perishable? Why make it last longer? Why make UHT milk? And I get the purpose of UHT, but don't start thinking, well, your butter... And I get stockists who go, oh, your butter's only got 3 months on it. You know, how are we going to move that? It's like, well, you know, don't buy it if you're not going to eat it within 3 months. But, you know, we need to go back. It's like bread. You know, people say, oh, your bread goes mouldy or whatever, stale. It's like, it should be eaten then and there. Enjoy it while it's fresh. And that's what we're really struggling with, is the mentality, that supermarket convenience mentality when it comes to making a quality product. You know, and when we make our butter, the unsalted is purely cream and cultures, that's all. It's up to you to look after it, to store it properly, and to ensure that it's taken care of. The education, sadly, is not there in this country to really value good food and to really value quality food and handcrafted or artisan food. So that, you know, lack of food sovereignty in our society impacts on the work we do, which is, and you guys as well, in terms of working hard to establish your brand and establish your product. So in terms of having GrAiNZ today and sharing that message, I wish we had a GrAiNZ for butter in this country, but I doubt we could fill a bathroom space with, you know, the number of people who make butter. So, you know, it's sad, but that's how it is in this country, I guess. The science of butter is absolutely fascinating, and I could talk for another 2 hours about it, to talk about saturated and unsaturated fats and oil in water and water in oil emulsions and triglycerides and lipids and all that sort of thing. But and that's what we need to understand if you're working in food, is really, you know, the science of butter. It would be good to have that opportunity. But ultimately, it's about cream, and cream is it's becoming scarce. But the freshness and the quality of cream just predicts the quality outcomes of that product, and particularly butter as well. So the fresher and the fresher that cream is, and certainly grass-fed, because we only use grass-fed cream, and we're lucky in Australia because we have that space to have our cows graze on the hills, but to have that fresh grass-fed cream really brings out a great butter. And we are very basic in how we make our butter, where we're faced with the challenges of seasons. So the cream does change with those seasons, and I have to adjust my recipe with those seasons and the degree of fermentation, or how much time I have to ferment. But that's the beauty of the product. I also, grass-fed cream, farmers, you know, amazing work that they do, and I wouldn't be here without that ability to be able to source good grass-fed cream from within an hour of where my factory is. So that brings me to, I forget about these slides, sorry about that. But this is a lovely quote from a book that I've been reading called Butter. And it's so true in the sense that you can have butter with other things and you can make so much with butter, but at the end of the day, it is something that is just as good on its own too. And I think, nothing better than good bread and good butter. So that's me in the dairy. It's not like I do milk the cows, just for a Kodak moment really. But it brings me to talk about, dairy and the dairy farmer today. And having the family, be in dairy and still be in dairy today is sort of my soft spot in that sense. And it's really sad to see the industry change. But basically, cream comes from cow's milk. The milk is pasteurized. It's illegal to sell unpasteurized, to actually sell it. And everything has to be pasteurized. Your milk is either homogenized or unhomogenized. Homogenized is when the cream basically the milk is processed and the cream runs throughout the milk. It doesn't separate. You don't see the cream on top. Unhomogenized is non-processed. The cream rises to the top. You have the milk. On a dairy farm, cows are milked twice a day, 7 days a week, and probably, roughly 340 days of the year. There's a drying off moment there for the cows to have a bit of respite and everything. There's pasture feed, out to feed the cows and to encourage for them to give milk. There's some silage there, which is like a fermented grass sort of thing, and there's hay, and that's stored for the winter time. Cows are the asset of the farmer. It's their livelihood. The cruelty or, the stories you might hear, it's just not something that is generally done in this country because you're basically compromising what makes your livelihood. Hormones, pesticides, fertilizers, antibiotics. Hormones, no such thing in cream, milk, that sort of thing. Hormones is more related to, the fattening up of beef or sheep for their meat, that sort of thing. Pesticides generally not used. Every time the milk is collected from the farmer, the processor takes it through a rigorous milk test to see that there are no remnants of pesticides or any bad bacteria and things like that. Otherwise, they dump it. They're not going to carry that forward. Fertilizers, a lot of farmers utilize a natural fertilizer. A lot of farmers have the sewage of captured in a dam outside of the dairy. It has all the poo and wee there. It has the water from the rain, which dilutes it. And with that, they pick that up and they spread it across the fields to encourage, good growth of grass and so forth. So there are some repurposing and recycling and reusing on the dairy farm as well. The processor, there's three people in the relationship of a dairy farmer, I guess, or three bodies. There's the processor, there's the farmer, and there's the customer. But here in this country, actually here across the world, it's the processor that owns the dairy farmer at the end of the day. Since deregulation in 2000, the processor sets the price for the milk for the dairy farmer to sell it to them. If the dairy farmer says, no, I don't want that price, the dairy farmer has nowhere else to go to sell their milk, so their hands are tied. And the farmer gets probably 70 cents, average now, it's 70 cents a litre they get for selling their milk. It's been as low as 15 cents. And then every 6 months it comes round for the processor to, let's say, negotiate a price that they think is fair. That it's around that low price that is putting a lot of pressure currently since COVID too on the farmer, and that's what we're seeing a lot of farmers leave the industry. And that leaving of the industry, that exiting of the industry, puts a lot of pressure on the product. So cream is becoming really scarce. We're now starting to have to fight with, ice cream makers and other butter makers and that sort of thing, trying to get good fresh cream. There are 5,800 registered dairy farms in Australia today. Most of the milk from those farms comes from Victoria. New South Wales is the next provider, but there's also Queensland, Tasmania and Western Australia. On the Sunshine Coast in the year 2000, this is a reflection of deregulation, there were something like 88 dairy farms. Today there's only about 32 dairy farms operating. Each time I drive down the Princess Highway past Colac to Warrnambool, and I do it probably once a month, I see dairy farms, they're all operating there, and then one day you see one close and it starts to gather cobwebs and that sort of thing, and it's actually really happening. They're either dying because they're too old to carry on, they're either leaving because they're retiring and their children don't want to be a part of that business because it's so labour intensive and the return on investment isn't great. In 2020, Australia's milk production reached its lowest in 25 years, and it's expected to decrease a further 20% in 23-24. So it's just heading downhill all the time. And then you throw in a couple of droughts, some floods, some high commodity prices, some, cost of electricity, cost of labour, council rates, fuel, machinery, all that sort of thing. That 70 cents per litre doesn't leave you much in terms of a profitable business. And that 70 cents is the highest it's been, isn't it, in a long time. So imagine your livelihood if you're making bread, and when it comes to selling your bread, that your only real option is to sell your bread to a third party, and they only will buy your bread at the price they say. And you only have a facility to manufacture, you don't have a facility to sell it. And then you've got various barriers of entry like packaging and tonnage and storage, so it's not like you can have that sitting there and wait for the best offer to come. Your hands are tied. You can only give it to a processor. You'd say, oh, well, why don't you just sell it straight to the customer? Then you have to pasteurize it, and then you have to separate it if you want to do skim milk and full cream milk, and then offer cream as well. And then you've got all that packaging aspect of it, and then transport and everything. It's not an easy thing to have to start. So what's the future hold for dairy? And there's good, there's positive. I know I'm making it sound a bit too dowry, but it's positive. But in the not too distant future, and I think it's already starting to happen, drinking fresh milk won't be the benefit that we're enjoying today. There'll be more UHT on the shelf than fresh milk, and a lot of that fresh milk will go overseas simply because they pay a lot more for it. But on the flip side, we're seeing more of that farm gate or more of that artisan come through. So I mentioned Mullaney Dairies. Oh no, did I mention Mullaney? I maybe mentioned it to you. There are these dairies that are pooling themselves or collaborating together to basically stick it to the processor and do it themselves, to bottle their milk and to pool their resources and, and get a better margin for their result. The same has happened in New South Wales with Big Little Dairy, and it's only a matter of time before it happens in Victoria. But we're seeing more and more of that micro dairy, that small batch dairy come about, which is really good because it's where the focus of quality comes through, and then therefore it's not driven by volume or shelf life. So I think I've covered it, and I think we're coming to the end, 1:45. But I hope I've given you some insight into us and where we fit in butter making and how dairy plays a big part in our lives. And just knowing what we are eating and that we support the little people making, I think that's why you're here today, to come together and support one another when it comes to purchasing good quality food. And, we've got great resources, got great natural resources to do that, which is great. And that looking out for good quality food and nothing in the ultra-processed or processed aspect is really important to our family and our children and our children's children. But at the end of the day, what we're creating is about bringing forward a good ethos for good quality, healthy food, and that's what is our bread and butter at the end of the day. I said bread and butter, see? Finished? Yeah. Thank you. Any questions at all? Yeah?
Why did they deregulate the milk in 2009?
Yeah, why did they do it? And it happened at all the same time around the world. It was devastating. Do you know why, Rob? Yeah?
Basically, as all dairy cooperatives demutualised and then become corporatised, and then they started to export because we were producing a lot of milk. It was really hard for Australia to compete internationally, so the big capital markets started to come in, and then the supermarkets started to basically bring this idea of deregulation into the industry. Because prior to that, it was all quotas, so farmers could get quotas. So with deregulation, people like it went from like 25 cents a litre down to 17, 18 cents a litre, maybe 19 cents if you had abundance. But also at the same time, the herd shifted from Jerseys and Guernseys and Brown Swiss to predominantly Friesians to basically the volume, so not very good quality. So the volume started to take over, not quality. So you had Friesians at 3% blood fat, whereas the Jerseys at 5.2, maybe 5.6%. And so that dropped away, so I was just going to the supermarkets of control to force us all out, and Victoria started all, and then having the New South Wales, and then Tasmania, and the whole of Australia just collapsed. And then obviously we saw the dollar a litre argument, so that's what it was. Now we're importing the product, we haven't got milk to feed ourselves.
And I think they said in the Weekly Times this week or last week that milk is still cheaper than soft drink.
Yes.
So, that's quite sad too.
And bottled water.
And bottled water, yeah. Yeah. Yes?
Monica, John Campbell from Providence Flour. We changed the niche of a niche and started taking what was just a commodity and taking it back to a product.
Yeah.
That identify certain
Good.
parameters, very similar to what you're doing.
Yeah.
But what I found particularly question for you is distribution. How have you gone about your distribution from your factory out to your customers? Because similarly, you're in an area that's dominated by convenience. Supermarkets are dominated by, let's call it basically commodity butter. And so how have you got distribution on a smaller scale, because they roll it in B-doubles and train loads?
Yeah.
How have you found your distribution side of things?
That's probably one of the biggest challenges of running a small business is distribution and logistics. And if I moved the factory to Geelong tomorrow, it wouldn't be an issue and it'd be so much cheaper to distribute our product. But because we're in Ocean Grove, it's another half an hour and it seems like another $300 on top of everything. But I've been through so many transport carriers. I could write a book about them. But and I still face issues today. At the moment, we have a good relationship with Trink Logistics, and they do our Melbourne runs. And then, I use about 3 or 4 different logistics, but the distribution is straight from the factory. So I don't have a distributor for our product as yet. It's direct wholesale, like it's order directly with us, and then we pack it and we send it out on the truck, that sort of thing. Delivery fee seems to be a dirty word. No one wants to pay it, so I think they expect pigeons to bring it or something like that, which really, bothers me. And you say they don't want to pay it, so they'd sooner go with the distributor for that sort of thing. But then the distributor wants to squeeze you out and take themselves a 50% margin as well. And then they'll say, well, your butter won't move because it's, $15 a unit. So you just have to, I think I've just persisted, and I've done a lot of the distribution myself too. Or, if someone's heading in that direction, do you mind taking a box of butter? But it's still, being in Ocean Grove, it's still hard.
It's certainly difficult to be able to access that kind of last mile.
That's the real key.
Yeah.
It's one of the key things, I think, is distribution for small people. Because you're right, it feels like anyone that is a distributor, with the greatest respect for any distributors, they probably peel whatever gives them the best margin.
That's right, yeah. It definitely is that for sure, and you're just doing the best you can to keep your head above water. But there are some places that I just can't get our product to, and it would have to be a pallet of butter then, and that's how it is at the moment. To get it across border, it has to be a pallet of butter to justify that carrying that cost as well for them. So yeah, it's one of those things, and we're so big, aren't we? Europe is so easy to get something to somewhere, but we're so big and so vast, it's just really hard, and we're reliant on trucks, aren't we? There's no other option really. And fuel levies through COVID were exorbitant. So, but yeah. Sorry, yeah.
Another question.
Oh, yep.
The customer of yours, in Melbourne, Rebecca.
Oh yeah, Bryce.
Yeah.
Oh, hello.
Are you delivering only on certain days in Melbourne? So the customer butter is not an extreme perishable. We could all work together to receive a delivery all the same days, and distribution-wise for you would be less expensive.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether.
Well, that's right. I mean, that would be great, because it's funny, we used to supply to Beatrix, which is just up the road for you, and so that's another drop and another cost. But those sort of things, that collaboration would work really well.
Because I feel as though most of your customers are on the same train boat as we are. I'm pretty sure if I would give a buzz to a few of the deals that they do in Melbourne, using the same butter as you, and say, well, Tuesday, Thursday, whatnot, is the day you're going to receive your butter delivery.
And then,
this is it, because that's all nuts, and it's not perishable, but I only get nuts from some supplier on Wednesday or Monday, and
yes.
they Melbourne. So
Yeah.
I feel like if you want to product, you have to handle it.
Yeah, and to have that forward planning, it could leave on Monday and you get it Tuesday, that sort of thing, definitely. I think, it's worth talking about for sure, Bryce. It can happen. I guess it's a matter of space too, and who's got that space to receive it, and then, divvy it up from there. But that's something worth talking about. There's so many trucks on the road, all going in the same direction, and if everyone collaborated, but it's just that collaboration that needs to start. Yes?
Is it possible at the moment for you to trace shipments of the bread you received?
No. Well, yes and no. I can only say it comes from the Western District at this stage, because the processor is in Geelong, so they really, gather up a lot of the farms in the Western District. But eventually you will, because with the price of cream going up and everything, and I've got 2 brothers who are milking, I'm about to we're in the process of planning to be able to use their milk to supply me with the cream to make my butter. And I think that's where it's going to go. So, and we'll look to bottle their milk as well and everything. So watch this space, I guess.
Does that mean you set up a dairy processing plant, essentially?
Yeah, or use an existing one or something like that. And, you know, it's something that, you know, has to happen, I think, because it's not really positive in the sense. And, you know, at least then I know where it's coming from, and it can be next day freshness too, which I'm really excited about too. Hello.
I'm based in a town or a city of 80,000, 2 hours north of Sydney. For me, we can get happy cider butter. I've got your butter.
Yeah.
And use it. It's fabulous.
Thank you.
For me to get happy cider butter takes up to 4 weeks, and it is 2 hours away.
Yeah.
Because my distributor does not, or the distributor
That's how long it takes
actually.
in Sydney as well, so don't worry.
Sorry?
It takes that long to get his
It's
butter in
crazy.
Sydney.
It's really crazy.
Why does it take that long?
I don't think the distributor understands anything that's out of the ordinary. I bring and leave a message. This is who I am. I need 4 boxes. You know, when you've got bread, you need butter.
Yeah.
Fantastic
Yes, that's true.
market. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've just reordered for the second time. Every same butter.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And that eats into the shelf life as well. You know, the soon you want it out there and with the customer as soon as you can.
And it eats into the connectivity of that process of maintaining, trying to build a market, you know, buy your loaf of bread with your butter at the same time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we have value for fortunes.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that seems really odd because even though we're 1.5 hours from Melbourne, we can get it there next. Well, if it leaves here today, they'll get it tomorrow, sort of thing.
I can't deal with it, so
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. That's frustrating. I'll hit you up with some butter. Hello.
As I'm a president of Gippsland, so we've got Gippsland Jersey.
Yeah,
And-
Sally.
And Sally, I went to school with Sally.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Fantastic.
You all know each other, don't you?
Yeah, that's. But on distribution, they have, ask anyone who's a wholesale customer of theirs that's
Yeah.
being tortured.
Yeah. And
So, absolutely. So I don't think that's yourself and Gippsland Jersey.
yeah, it's not unique to us.
Yeah.
And Australia Post is, oh my God, you know, why, with all the channels they have and all the post offices they have, why don't they run, and all the trucks they have, why don't they run a refrigerated truck? They don't need many, but the channels are there in place. It just needs a refrigerated truck. But geez, you know, I've seen so many horrible photos of my product reaching the customer and it looks like an elephant sat on it, you know. It's just shocking and it breaks my heart because it's not cheap to send product out. The heavier it gets, you know, that sort of thing.
And that's someone who grew up on a dairy farm. Was startled to listen to a podcast a few weeks ago about how now dairy.
Kathy, yeah.
Yeah, and then doing, you know, so sexing the car, the AI.
Yeah.
And then not separating the carbs. And I'm just startled with that and how that's a thing. Do you think that sort of thinking about welfare, animal welfare will become more apparent?
If it was, why is there only Kathy?
Yeah.
That's it. There's only, and she's been around. Yeah, it's like organic milk.
Yeah.
How much of it have we got? Not very much. But you go to the States or you go to the UK, and they've got several different. You know, I don't know what it is. And it's clearly it's education, but you know, you've got Schultz, you've got Baramba Organics. That's about it. There's not much out there. But there was a massive push in the 90s for everything organic. But it's just not happening here, the take-up. And whether it's just the supermarkets have taken over and it's all about convenience and the dollar, then that's pretty much killed off a lot of what Kathy's doing. I'd expect to see more, really. It's a great story. It's a great idea. But you don't see it.
You know, the producer, you know, the single origin
Yeah.
Dairy.
Yes.
You know,
That's what it's going to come back
Dairy
to.
is a dairy organisation, and where I grew up in the Cavarson irrigation district, you know,
Yeah.
you know, where the average size of the farm started at 100 acres.
Yeah.
And I don't think what it is now, but there's some enormous,
Well, that's it.
enormous operations.
It's not sustainable to run a small herd these days. It was back in the 70s and 80s, but now it's, you know, it's 800 plus.
Yeah.
And that's huge. And imagine, you know, on that level, what you've got to deal with. That's massive. And twice a day milking. And it's still done by hand, really. So, yeah. I mean, but cows are beautiful. When everyone says she's a cow, I say, no, cows are lovely. It's a goat.
One is a great question. I think there was one more question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, maybe, and then we'll wrap it up.
Oh, yeah.
Also, I just wanted to say there's a dairy called Stella Dairy.
Oh, Castlemaine, yes. She's doing good things too, yeah.
My question was about your culture.
Can't tell you. It's my secret. No, I'm kidding. So the cultures is a lactic culture, and funny thing about cultures, they're created to make cheese. So if your butter ever gets cheesy, it's because of the culture, and that's a long ferment and that sort of thing. Pepe Saya does it. He does a really long ferment. It gets cheesy. That's but the cultures, so look for a mesophilic culture, which is a low temperature culture. Flora Danica is perfect to make butter with. You can't lose with that. That's perfect. And then I use 3 different cultures, but it's a recipe. And if I was to tell you that, I'd have to shoot you. So we don't want that.
But what is it, so the temperature that you do it at?
20 degrees, so room temperature.
Yeah.
Nothing more. So in the summer it was 13 hours. Now in the winter it's up to 18 to 24 hours, and that's that seasonal thing, and you have to adjust. And I've been in the factory at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and you know, and particularly in the summer, and it's already ready because it's got to reach the right pH, and the pH. So your cream starts at 7. It's got to drop with the lactic bacteria. It's fermenting. It's souring the cream. I've got to get it at the right pH to then start chilling it down and pump it across to the churn. And it would have been really good to have you come and visit the butter factory and everything to see how it works. But it's that pH that really dictates the flavour of the butter too.
I feel like as we kind of like fading into a new season, like personally I found that butter has changed ever since.
Yeah, yeah. In what way?
Not in a bad way. It's just like it's slightly more brittle.
Yeah.
Lately, so it's
Yes.
the fat has been different.
Yeah. Good point. Autumn and spring are the more brittle butter, and less of the soft fats, more of the hard fats. And summer mainly summer, more softer fats because of more variety in the feed and the clovers and flowers and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's that seasonal. That's what, and you will have to change your lamination process based on that. You do, but it's good that you've taken it up on that. To use those fractionated sheets, you're basically using something that's consistent throughout the year, and it's only full of hard fats and no soft fats, which means no flavour, which means they've added a flavour. And I can eat a croissant and know that it's used a Fletchard's or a Corman's. I can tell it straight away. Sorry, I've taken up your time. Kick me out. I know. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much.